Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mok-yeon. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has made a rare overseas appearance, joining China's Victory Day celebrations in Beijing. It's the first time in over 6 decades that a North Korean leader has attended a Chinese parade, underscoring the moment's symbolism. Kim was seen alongside Chinese President Xi Jinping and Russian President Vladimir Putin, the first such gathering since the Cold War. Now, on the sidelines, Kim and Putin also held a bilateral summit where Putin thanked North Korean troops for fighting in Ukraine and pledged new agreements. Amid these developments, the question now is what this rare moment of unity means for the Korean Peninsula and the wider region. To help us unpack this, we're joined in the studio by Dr. Kim Mok-yeon, Senior Research Fellow at the Institute for National Security Strategy. Welcome back, Dr. Go.
Thanks for having me.
And also joining us online is Frank Januzzi, President and CEO at the Marine and Mike Mansfield Foundation. Good to see you again.
Good evening.
So let's begin our discussion with Dr. Go. The big picture first. So North Korean leader Kim Jong-un attended China's Victory Day parade. Dr. Go, tell us about the significance and the background of Kim's latest visit.
Well, I think this is a China-driven event. It's not so much that North Koreans are requesting to come to the Victory Day parade. The Chinese want to bring not just North Korea, but also Russia together so that they can project the image that China is standing shoulder to shoulder with rogue states such as Russia and North Korea at this juncture. And this is a very interesting change of, I would say, pace on the part of China. The reason why I say this is because China wanted to keep some distance from North Korea especially, and also from Russia. And the reason was because China didn't want to be accused of supporting Russia's illegal war in Ukraine, as well as North Korea's illicit nuclear program. And also, China didn't want to be seen siding with this narrative that North Korea was pushing, which is that right now we're living in the era of a new Cold War, meaning that there's going to be an existential confrontation between China on one hand and the United States on the other. So China didn't want to rationalize the U.S. decoupling strategy against it. So wanted to stay away from this narrative, from Pyongyang, from Moscow. But now China suddenly has decided that they're going to receive North Korea with open arms. And I think this is a part of Chinese strategic communication to show to the United States and the West that that China is now no longer going to essentially receive the punches. Now it's going to respond, and the way it's going to respond is by aligning itself with Russia and North Korea, essentially saying that it subscribes now to North Korea's narrative of a new Cold War, an era of confrontation. But it doesn't mean that China is going to start a confrontation with the United States from now. Essentially, I think it's leaving some room for the United States and the West to intervene and essentially step back from a potential conflict with China. So it's a diplomatic move on China on many different levels. So there's a multiple positioning, not just by China, but also by North Korea and Russia. So it's a very symbolic event.
So it was definitely a historic moment indeed. Now, building on this, just before the visit, North Korea revealed Kim Jong-un's inspection of a missile production line and an ICBM research facility, and even made public the details of his train departure. Mr. Januzzi, why do you think Pyongyang unusually disclosed Kim's movements so quickly this time around?
Well, building off of Professor Go's comments, with which I agree, I think what we're seeing right now is a more confident North Korea on the global stage. North Korea is probably anticipating symmetry diplomacy in the future with the United States. But prior to doing that, he is securing all of his flanks. He is strengthening his relationship with China. He has already developed a strategic relationship with Russia, and his willingness to both publicize his travel schedule and also show off his growing military capabilities, including next generations of missiles. All of this speaks to a North Korea striding confidently on the global stage. Kim Jong-un has matured as a leader. and standing beside Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin in Moscow was really a great coming out party for Kim Jong-un on the global stage. So I think that what you're seeing is positioning by North Korea in preparation for at least resuming some form of dialogue with the United States, but doing it from a position of strength, secure in the knowledge that he has a Russian ally who will provide military equipment and support, and a Chinese ally who is trying to really get back in the game, having been a bit isolated from relations with North Korea due to COVID and due to North Korea's own reluctance to take instructions from Beijing.
Right, so we're now dealing with a more confident North Korea, and we'll have to look into what strategic message it really wants to send. Now, adding to this intrigue, what was noticeable was that Kim Jong-un's daughter, Kim Jue, was also accompanied with him on his trip to China. What can we read into this with this companionment?
Well, as your report rightly pointed out, Kim Jong-un wishes to ensure that the country has a succession plan in place. But I would argue that this does not necessarily mean that Kim Jue will be the successor. I think really what is being announced here is that North Korea has a successor if required. And he is also clearly someone, Kim Jong-un, who has a close circle of confidants, and that begins with family first. So Kim Jue is being groomed for global role, but whether that role will include being the successor as leader of North Korea, I think it's really premature to say.
So we cannot be 100% sure, but it seems to be a striking presence. She seems to be having a striking presence there in Beijing. Now, let's now shift to China's role, Dr. Go. As you've mentioned, this trip marks Kim's first visit to China in more than 6 years. Why do you think China is now kind of seeking more to restore ties with North Korea? And do you see this once distant relationship kind of improve, especially after closer ties between North Korea and Russia?
So I don't think there's a conflict over North Korea between China and Russia. I don't think there's a competition to show who's a better friend of North Korea. I think the relationship between China and North Korea weren't that bad to begin with. I think in terms of substance, I don't think China ever tried to penalize North Korea, for instance, economically, for having aligned with Russia because of North Korea aiding Russia's effort in Ukraine. It was only happening at the symbolic level, at the communicative level, meaning China clearly, intentionally tried to avoid giving the perception that it was aligning with North Korea. So that was, in many ways, exaggerated, as if the relationship between Pyongyang and Beijing had deteriorated. So it shows right now that when China needs North Korea, and they get together very quickly, and showing that at the substantive level, the relationship wasn't ever bad between the two countries. So, but then the timing is very interesting. I think the timing shows that China is engaged in this policy inflection point. It's going to issue an external policy towards the United States. We have to pay attention to the joint communique issued at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting in Tianjin. And the communique was all about condemning the United States and blaming the United States for the current instability in the world stage. So essentially, China is rallying together like-minded states behind it in a formula of anti-Americanism. And there are no better countries, examples of anti-Americanism than Russia and North Korea at this time. So I think this is a strong reason why China wanted to have both Russia and North Korea in Tiananmen Square for the parade.
Right, so definitely a sign of a more closer, stronger alignment between the three countries. Now, like Dr. Go has mentioned, the attention was really focused on this rare gathering of the leaders of North Korea, China, and Russia at the parade. And like I said, it's been more than 6 decades since the three sides actually stood together. Mr. Januzzi, what message did this photo op kind of send to the international community? Do you think should this be seen as a formal declaration of a new trilateral alignment?
Well, I'm struck by the deep contrast between a United States, which has imposed tariffs on its closest allies, South Korea, Japan, the EU, has imposed severe tariffs on India, a country which the United States, until very recently, had been courting quite aggressively to try to bring India into the Western camp, aligning with India and Japan and Australia through the Quad mechanism. I'm struck by the contrast between America alone, essentially battling its closest friends, Canada, Mexico, the EU, Korea, Japan, on the economic front, and the scene in Beijing, where you have Xi Jinping attempting to be the leader of essentially a new global order, aligned in anti-American sentiment, with the leaders of Russia, India, North Korea, and other countries. And what strikes me most about this contrast is that, in truth, there are still strategic differences among India, China, Russia. These three countries are not natural allies. In fact, in many ways, economically and politically, they have traditionally been competitors or even adversaries. And yet, in this moment in time, they are positioning themselves in solidarity against an America that increasingly looks isolated on the global stage. So I think what we are witnessing is the formation of a new global order, with Beijing asserting leadership on the global stage. But I believe that that order is not consolidated because it does not rest on a strong strategic foundation of shared values and interests among India, China, and Russia. So there is still time for the United States and other countries to try to avoid a kind of a new Cold War structure of power blocks, one led by the United States and the other by China. And I think that what we may see in the coming months is a pivot by the United States to reach out to China to see if they cannot, in fact, repair relations somewhat and try to avoid consolidating that Beijing-led power bloc.
So we'll keep tabs on how that flows. Now, alongside this parade, another very important event, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and President Putin also held a bilateral summit, their first in over a year. And there, President Putin took the occasion to thank North Korean troops and also spoke of new agreements. Dr. Go, how significant was this summit, and what does this actually tell about the deepening ties between the two countries?
I think there's a tendency in Russia and North Korea in mirroring what the United States and South Korea do. So I think the recent summit the summit that took place today between Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un, I think it's a carbon copy of the recently very successfully held summit between President Lee Jae-myung and President Trump. So we have to remember that the Russians and North Koreans use the term comprehensive strategic partnership between these two countries. Exactly echoes the way South Korea and the United States characterize their alliance, which is a comprehensive strategic alliance. So you can easily guess what kind of agreements Russia and North Korea have probably reached in today's summit. It probably reflects or mirrors the agreements that the South Korea and the United States reached on the summit in Washington. So basically, probably agreement in more like a technological cooperation, joint research in cutting technology, probably some sort of a cooperation when it comes to economic production, munition production, and so forth. So we have to understand that but at the same time, it doesn't mean that the Russians and North Koreans are going to live up to the agreements they signed today. there's a lot of bluffing on the part of countries like Russia and North Korea. And here, again, we have to understand that the focus here lies with mirroring what South Korea and the United States have just done. So North Korea especially wants to show to South Korea and the United States that they too have a very important close blood tie ally in the form of Russia, and they are developing very strong ties with them, trying to show to the United States and South Korea that North Korea doesn't need them anymore for dialogue, for stability, for economic development. So, but then at the same time, we know Russia is not big enough, powerful enough, rich enough to provide for what North Korea really seeks, which is security guarantees and economic guarantees. So North Korea needs South Korea and the United States. So I think we have to understand that all these events that are taking place between North Korea and its partners outside of Korean Peninsula is very much a posturing on the part of North Korea, positioning itself for a more advantageous negotiation position down the road.
Right. So a lot of strategy from North Korea's side. And stepping a little bit back, so this is Kim Jong-un's debut on this multilateral diplomatic stage. I wonder, since you're an expert in this field, how did you evaluate his performance in this stage, and how do you expect Kim to embark on broader diplomatic pushes?
Well, it's not very complicated to analyze Kim Jong-un's motivation in coming to this multilateral meeting. I mean, oftentimes there's this consensus that Kim Jong-un tends to turn down invitation to multilateral gatherings, and the reason is because he wants the spotlight to be on him. And often the reason is because Kim Jong-un, the regime needs this kind of events to showcase how important he is to the domestic audience. So if he's shown in a clip where he's standing far apart from other leaders, in a corner, looking like he's more of isolated from the rest of from his peers, it's not going to look too good for the domestic audience. So he needs a guarantee that he will receive a lot of spotlight. And that's exactly the Chinese have provided. So he was standing shoulder to shoulder with Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin at the podium at a very important event for China. So this is exactly the kind of event that he was seeking to get from his external engagements. He finally got it, and that's why he came.
So this may be the start of Kim, trying to keep more active in multilateral diplomacy. Now, let's also turn to South Korea's role. So unlike most U.S. allies, which either sent low-level envoys or stayed away, Seoul actually dispatched National Assembly Speaker Woo Won-sik to the Victory Day ceremony. Mr. Januzzi, does this reflect the Lee administration's pragmatic diplomacy? And in the midst of intensifying great power rivalry, what kind of foreign policy direction should Seoul actually pursue?
Well, I was honored to see President Lee when he arrived in Washington just about a week ago. And I was struck by his remarks at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, where President Lee emphasized the partnership with the United States, of course, but also spoke warmly of the importance of Korea-Japan relations and embraced, I think, the spirit of Camp David of U.S. ROK Japan trilateralism. So what I interpret from South Korea's participation, albeit not at the top level in Beijing's celebrations, is a very pragmatic and frankly, a very wise and strategic move by South Korea to acknowledge the importance of the South Korea-China relationship, even as it aligns closely with the United States and to a lesser degree with Japan in terms of its security interests. I think this is wise and pragmatic in part because President Lee is anticipating a move by President Trump as early as this fall to repair relations with China to some degree, to reduce the tariffs on Chinese products, and strategically put the U.S.-China relationship on a better footing. So in essence, what President Lee is doing here in a pragmatic and smart way is to prepare the ground for a improved China-South Korea relationship, anticipating that that is exactly where the United States is going to end up, perhaps as early as the end of this year. So I wouldn't read too much into it. It's not South Korea aligning with China. In fact, what it is doing, South Korea is doing, is ensuring that it can maintain sound relations with its largest trading partner, the People's Republic of China, even as it aligns closely with the United States and even with Japan to preserve its vital national security interests.
Mm-hmm. So sending this high-level figure was a bold, strategic, and pragmatic approach from Seoul's part. Now, finally,
all of the above.
All of the above. Thank you for that. Dr. Go, with Kim Jong-un's visit to China, many argue that the South Korean government must now kind of reshape its policy on North Korea. What do you think about this? How should Seoul actually respond to a North Korea that's seeking to kind of expand into multilateral diplomacy?
No, I think we should be patient. First of all, North Korea is making very clear that it's not interested in inter-Korean dialogue at the moment. It's very much invested in expanding relations with China and Russia. So there's no point for South Korea to step in and argue and trying to convince North Korea that it should come back to the inter-Korean dialogue stage, because it's not going to be effective at all. So instead, I think South Korea should be waiting for the right time. And here, I think there's a hint that came up during the summit between President Lee and President Trump, which is the United States. I think there's alignment of interest and views when it comes to North Korea between Washington and Seoul at the moment. And President Trump essentially verbally and in front of cameras agreed to assume the role of the mediator, the peacemaker. So, and we know that despite all the criticism that North Korea reserves for South Korea, it's just saving those for President Trump. I mean, it's not refraining from criticizing President Trump. So there's clearly a potential for U.S.-North Korea dialogue down the road. Clearly, North Korea is, as Mr. Januzzi has pointed out, North Korea, despite what he says on the surface, is interested and waiting for the prospect of a dialogue between Washington and Pyongyang. So I think supporting the dialogue, it's going to be important, not just because it makes moral sense, but also makes a political sense, because one of the fears that South Korea has is so-called Korea passing, meaning bypassing South Korea when the United States and North Korea engage in dialogue bilaterally excluding South Korea. So by supporting the effort by President Trump in engaging North Korea, we minimize such a risk. So there's the first political benefit. Second is that by showing that to the North Koreans that the United States will never exclude South Korea from the engagement initiative, then it's going to empower South Korea's negotiation position with North Korea. So paradoxically speaking, approaching North Korea is not going to lead to an inter-Korean dialogue, but then tightening a dialogue with the United States on North Korea is going to empower South Korea's hands in this regard.
Mm-hmm. So staying aligned with Washington's strategies and also supporting dialogue between the two countries would be helpful, definitely. I'm afraid we'll have to conclude our discussion right here. Thank you so much for your insights, Dr. Go.
My pleasure.
And Mr. Januzzi, we appreciate it.
감사합니다.
And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame. Be sure to tune in again next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Till then, stay informed and engaged.